Well, today, thank you so much, Scott, for having me. I'll be talking about eye openers for economic and financial issues for survivors of domestic violence. Now, a lot of what I'll be talking about, we call it eye openers, but for the audience today, a lot of you have already had your eyes open to a lot of this, but let's just jump into it and talk about some of these issues and what can be done for survivors. So first of all, just talking about economic abuse, when a batterer is trying to control the victim's finances to prevent them from doing these four things: accessing resources, working or maintaining the control of their own earnings, achieving self-sufficiency, and gaining financial independence. There's so much more that happens in the situation of domestic violence, but it's always important to have an idea about these kind of things that are going on, because so often a lot of the control is in the financial situation with the couple. So I'm going to be talking about financial exploitation and coerced debt. Three ways that coercive control is used. These are obvious to those of us who are working in this space. Using that coercion to dictate financial behavior, like handing over your paycheck, using your credit card to, buy something for me. Financial harm can also result from non-compliance with other demands. Okay, you didn't cook the right thing for dinner, so I'm not going to give you any money for food because you clearly don't know what you're doing. And those kinds of things, cell phones. And then also just that whole threat of harm in general is keeping the survivor from really doing something about financial issues, just because it might threaten her physical well-being, which is always the most important thing. So these coercive conditions do lay the groundwork for coerced debt, where the partner does just increase control of you in these financial and economic ways. So three things on financial control: restricting income generation, restricting the use of the income or property, and then restricting access to financial information. For example, not knowing how much money is in the bank account, not knowing where the bank account is, any number of things. So stop the damage and prevent further financial harm. First of all, we're going to talk about some ways to do that, but definitely don't take any of the steps if it seems unsafe. You can do things like asking the landlord to remove your name from a lease if you're not living there anymore. And we obviously have some law about that. My slides are moving too fast. And then asking the landlord to remove your name, having the utility company remove your name from accounts. And this is something I think is really important, because we do often run into people who have left, but if the utility was in their name, any kind of a deficiency or balance that is owed can follow you to another location. And so we often have people who say, well, I moved out of there. I don't know why they're trying to make me pay this bill. But sometimes it can keep you from being able to get a new utility account in your name, because that's still on your utility record. But there's something you can do about that, and we'll talk about that. Calling the cell phone company to cancel the account, but obviously you don't want to be without communication. The PINs and passwords and all of those things now are so important. And we do have a lot of apps where you can save all the passwords and that sort of thing, but need to be careful about that, because if your partner gets the access to that app, then they know all your passwords. But you should be able to freely change those, or the survivors should be able to freely change those if needed. Obviously, credit freeze, that's something we talk about a lot, because even when you have a survivor has left the situation, they may have their credit continue to be used by the partner. And when that happens, you may not know about it. And we'll talk about that. Also, obviously, consider using the post office box if you're making changes with your creditors. Yeah, that's really important. Obviously, you don't want to be receiving mail and then it gets opened by their partner and the jig is up. So here's some signs of economic abuse. All the bills are just in one person's name. That's one. The partner refuses to add the name of the survivor to the bank account, to the title to the car, to the home. You know, that control where you don't have anything in your name. But yeah, just not having anything in your name can be a real problem later on if you leave, because then you have no credit because nothing has ever been in your name. Another sign is obviously the partner opens a credit card in their name. And then also, this is what we've seen a fair amount, and that is when the partner will encourage the survivor to go back to school. Oh, I want you to go back to school and get an education. But then, you know, there's no money to pay for it. So they want them to get a student loan. And then what happens to the student loan? It doesn't pay for what it's supposed to go for. The partner keeps it and uses it for themselves. And that's something, again, that we see a lot, because with student loans, some of it you actually get the money because it's supposed to be for housing or books or things like that. They might pay tuition straight from the student loan, but you're going to get a check for some other things. And if their partner takes those funds, then you're going to be, and keep in mind, student loans are really hard to get out of, even though we have a lot going on with student loans now, thankfully, where they can be paid or discharged or even forgiven with some of the new things that are happening. So that's great, but you never know what's going to happen down the road, how much of your student loan might still be there. And that does follow you, because if it's a federal student loan, any kind of federal benefits that you might be entitled to, even when the person is older and they're getting Social Security. We have people all the time who come in and say, oh, I don't even know what this is that they're taking out of my Social Security check. And it turns out it's a student loan from way back. Okay, financial exploitation, obviously, when the partner is trying to hurt them by hurting them financially, unfairly using those resources, just like with the student loans, spending money, stealing money or property, generating debt. And that makes it hard to leave, because if the partner is their source of money, they need that money to pay those debts that have been put in their name. So let's talk about coerced debt. Any non-consensual credit-related transaction that occurs within an abusive intimate relationship. That is what we call coerced debt. And I think it's important to know that concept, because it does happen a lot, and it's becoming more and more well-known as a concept in domestic violence. So it's like obtaining credit in the partner's name, whether it be mortgages, student loans, car financing, or anything else. Putting bills in the partner's name. Both of those are types of coerced debt, because the survivor may consent to it, but it's under duress, so it's really not consent. And sometimes it's just their abusive partner doing it without asking. So here's the three mechanisms of coerced debt. Three different ways it happens. One is just totally fraud, right? Basically identity theft. Then it's coercion, which is just using demands and threats to get the person to incur the debt. And then also just manipulation, deliberately managing conditions or information that leads the survivor to take on debt that she would not have otherwise incurred. So these are really the three ways that it happens in general. Now here's the effects. Credit report problems, financial dependence, and financial hardship. Those are the three effects. Obviously, I don't have to open your eyes on that. You know that already. So let's talk about the 3 steps to identifying the coerced debt. Okay. Because the survivor may not know what all debt there is. They may know some of it, but not all of it. So the best way to do that is to get that credit report, review the accounts, and then discuss any other debt with them that they might have that they don't know about. So get the credit report, step number 1, because and credit reports are more and more important these days because it's not just about can you qualify for a loan. Credit reports and background reports are used now by employers, landlords, banks, so it's really important. And then you want to just review the accounts. What accounts do have your name on them. And you can contact the creditor yourself, or the survivor can contact the creditor themselves and do any one of these 3 things, or maybe there's other options, but they can close the account, take their name off the account, or just place some kind of an alert on the account so that when someone calls, if it's the abusive partner or the abuser that's calling, then they'll know when they pull that account up on the computer, which is what they always do. When someone calls about the account, first thing they do is pull it up on the computer. And when that happens, the person on the other end, the creditor, is going to see that alert and be very careful about what they do with that account. Okay. Discussing other debt with the survivor, and that's just things like not necessarily financing, but monthly bills. Again, things like the utilities, or even the rent, as Mark was talking about earlier. You can ask that the account be closed, take your name off the account, or again, place some other kind of alert there, just like in the previous example. So here's some action steps that will help with coerced debt. We've already talked about most of them, dealing with the lease, shutting off utilities, changing account information, protecting your credit, having a safety plan, and then prioritizing debts, advocating, and obviously taking legal action. And this is something, obviously, that we do. If there are issues with debt, maybe a survivor gets sued for a credit card. And you might think, well, it's a credit card that's in their name, but it is a defense to a credit card lawsuit if it's been a coerced debt and it's not really something that the survivor signed up for. Okay, and I want to mention this to you. We, back a while ago, had one of the experts in coerced debt and financial exploitation to assist us with doing a YouTube video. And I think it's a really great tool for all of you who are in the audience. She has a wonderful voice. And I'm not going to play the video for you because it's pretty lengthy, but I think it's something that if you watch it, you'll find it to be super helpful and something that you can refer those that you're working with to, just to give them an idea of what may be happening in their financial world. And so I recommend that to everybody. Obviously, Scott has already promoted our YouTube channel, which is always appreciated for sure. But this is a great video. I think you can just go to our YouTube channel and search for coerced debt, and you'll find this, but you'll also have these slides where you can just click on it and it goes straight to the video. So I really recommend that to you guys. And then obviously the Connect card that we have now that shows all of our social media, which may have looked at already. But definitely go ahead right now and scan that QR code down in the left-hand corner, and you can sign up for our newsletter. And while you have a moment, because I think I have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to leave this up for just a minute so you can take a picture of this screen with your phone if it's nearby, which I'm sure it is, and go ahead and check out all of our social media where you can find out more about what we're doing and the resources that we have. And definitely go to the YouTube channel, like and subscribe. We've got great content on there, and we're well over, I think, 1,500 subscribers now who have found that content really helpful. And of course, that's where the video is about coerced debt that I highly recommend to you. There you go. And the most important thing, I think, is a survivor's financial health is important because it follows you, but it's never important as their safety. And so we always want to remember that when we're looking at ways that they can survive the financial part of domestic violence, which is coerced debt and financial exploitation. These are some options that I want to make sure everybody knows about, because your folks that you're working with who are survivors have some really good options if they find themselves in these financial situations. Our Department of Consumer Affairs here in South Carolina, all of these, of course, have an online complaint system, and Consumer Affairs here in South Carolina has a great one, and they are really helpful in trying to resolve issues, whether it be about credit cards, car financing, and those sorts of things. If the survivor has a problem with something like that, then that's definitely the way to go. If they're trying to get a credit card company to work with them, or a car lender or financier to work with them, this is a great option. Also, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that's the federal government, but they have all those same options and ways to help. And they're the feds, so they've got a lot of pull. Also, the Federal Trade Commission, same thing. They also have an online complaint system, and they also have a separate website that they, I think, launched about a year and a half ago, maybe, on fraud and all the different ways that fraud can happen to you. And so I recommend that as well. I think it's stopfraud.gov or something like that. But you can link to it from ftc.gov real easily. Office of Regulatory Staff. This is related to utilities. They have an online complaint system when there's issues with a utility company and you're not able to resolve them yourself. You can file a complaint there, and what that does, and we typically use this, at least I do, in situations where a survivor has moved on, but the utility was in their name with the partner. And that debt, if the partner doesn't pay the utility and moves to another place themselves, doesn't close that down or whatever, and there's a bill that has built up, that follows the survivor. And when the survivor is trying to set up a new utility at a new place, they may have a demand that this previous bill be paid before they can even open the account. And if that happens, then ORS is a really good way to get that resolved. Now, they're not miracle workers. If if a person does owe the money, there's not always something they can do. But one thing that they do have some ability to do is help you set up a payment plan for whatever that past due amount is. And then also the National Credit Union Administration, I just wanted to mention that one too, because they do have their own website with a complaint system, because they're different. In other words, our Department of Consumer Affairs can't help you with an issue with a credit union. So for example, if your car is financed with a credit union and you're having issues with that, and you want to file a complaint to see if something can be done about it, you would file that at the in CUA and not our consumer affairs department. So those are just some good, I think, self-help options that we routinely will recommend to people that come to us. Well, I think I'm about out of time, but I think y'all probably have all this information here that you can find. Really a lot of great stuff. We have a lot of really good resources when it comes to domestic violence on all of our channels and our website. So definitely go there and hopefully find some really good information. I think my time is up, and thank you for having me, Scott.